Senators, State Duma deputies, citizens of Russia, every address to the Federal Assembly is, first of all, an attempt to look into the future. And today we are not going to speak about our short-term plans only, but about strategic objectives as well, about the matters that we believe are important for the confident long-term development of the country. And this kind of program, this kind of concrete measures has been developed during my trips to the regions, my conversations with the workers, engineers of the civilian and military factories, with the doctors, with the teachers, with the scientists, with volunteers, with entrepreneurs, with the families, with our frontline heroes, with the volunteer fighters, with the officers of the Russian armed forces. We understand that one has to prepare for such events, but still we hear about real problems of the people. Suggestions by the citizens, their aspirations, their hopes are at the core of those initiatives, of those projects that we are going to discuss today. I hope we can overcome everything. Together we can do anything. And by standing together, we did not just fend off the global pandemic, but we have also shown that in our society we have such value as the mutual support, solidarity, mercy. And today, when our motherland is fighting for its sovereignty and safety, protecting the lives of our people in Donbass and Malorossiya, the decisive role is played by our citizens, by our tight-knit group, by the loyalty to our motherland. And these qualities were shown in the very beginning of the special military operation, when it was supported by the vast majority of the Russian population, despite all the hardships, because despite all the tragedies, the people stuck with the country's choice, and they are trying to do as much as they can for the benefit of the country. In the factories, they are working in 3 shifts, as much as the front line needs. The entire economy, industrial or technological, has shown flexibility and perseverance. I would like to thank entrepreneurs, engineers, workers, farmers for their responsible and hard work in the interest of Russia. Millions of people were united by the campaign. We stand together in everything for the victory. Over 2 years, Russian businesses sent billions of rubles to the volunteer organizations and foundations that support our soldiers and their families. People are sending letters to the front line, warm clothes, camouflage netting. They are donating their modest savings to the front line, and it's a valuable assistance. It's everyone's contribution to our common victory. Our heroes at the front lines, in the trenches where it's the hardest, they know that the entire country stands with them. I would like to mention the Foundation Defenders of the Motherland, the Committee of the Soldiers of the Motherland, and other civic organizations. I would like to instruct all the bodies of the government to do everything to support the families of our soldiers, their parents, wives, children that worry about their loved ones and they want to see them back home. I'm grateful to the parliamentary faction for consolidating around the national interest. Political system of Russia is one of the pillars of the country's sovereignty. We will continue to develop the democracy institutions. We will not allow anyone to interfere with our domestic national affairs. The so-called West, with its colonial habits, with the habit to sow national conflicts across the world, they do not want only to hinder our development. Instead of Russia, they want a dependent, dying out space where they can do anything they want. Basically, they would want to do with Russia the same thing that they did in many other regions of the world, including in Ukraine. They would like to sow discord and in our country and make us weaker, but they miscalculated, which is already absolutely obvious. They are confronted by the firm position of our people, our soldiers and officers, peasant Muslims and Christians, Buddhists and followers of the Judaism. In practice, they have shown that the unity of Russia is a colossal force that can overcome anything. By standing together, all of us, shoulder to shoulder, we fight for one motherland. All of us are citizens of Russia. We will stand together to ensure our freedom. We will define our own path. We will preserve and cherish the connection between the generation. We will resolve the tasks that our country is facing based on our paradigms, based on the values and traditions that we are going to pass on to our children. Strengthening of our sovereignty is an important task that everyone should take care of. And at the front line, it's even more so, where our soldiers fight heroically. I would like to thank everyone who's fighting for the interests of the motherland, for those who are going through wartime hardships, risking their lives on a daily basis. All the people, the entire population is bowing down to your exploits. Russia will always remember its fallen heroes. I would like to declare a minute of silence. Thank you. Our armed forces have gained huge battle combat experience. All the units are now working great together, and now we have seasoned veteran officers who take care of their soldiers, who know how to reach the objectives, how to use the new types of equipment, and how to carry out the objectives given to them. And it goes for all the levels, from a platoon to the highest levels of leadership. Yes, we understand that there are still problems, but at the same time, we understand what has to be done, and we go on resolving these issues both at home and at the front lines. We aim to make our army stronger, make it more efficient, more technologically capable. We have multiplied the capabilities of our armed forces. Our armed forces now have the initiative. They are on the offensive in a number of directions, liberating new territories. We weren't the ones who started the war in Donbass, but as I said on many occasions, we will do everything to put an end to it, to eradicate Nazism, to resolve all the tasks, to reach all the objectives of the special military operation, to defend the sovereignty and safety of our people. Our strategic nuclear forces are ready to implement their capabilities, what we have planned in the defense area, what I spoke about in my address in 2019. We have done everything, or we are about to finalize it. Kinjal hypersonic missile complex has not been introduced to the armed forces already, but it is already being used to target the strategic objectives during the special military operation. Zircon hypersonic missile complex has also been used. 5 years ago, we have not even heard about this complex, but now we already use this weapon. We have intercontinental long-range missiles Avangard and laser complex Peresvet in our armed forces. We are finalizing the testing of the missile complexes Brevesting and Poseidon. These systems proved to be highly efficient. They proved to be unique, and it's not an exaggeration to say that. Sarmat missiles were delivered to the troops, and soon we are going to demonstrate them. We continue to work on a number of other advanced weaponry, and we will learn soon about the new accomplishments of our military engineers and scientists. I would like to emphasize the following, colleagues. I would like everyone to understand me in the right way. We are dealing with a state where the ruling elites are openly hostile to us. And do they want to discuss strategic stability with us in earnest? At the same time, they want to deal Russia, as they say, strategic defeat on the battlefield. I can give you one example of such hypocrisy. Recently, we hear more often accusations against Russia that we plan to deploy nuclear weapons in space. And this kind of fake news is just a trick to drag us into negotiations on their conditions that would be beneficial only to the United States. At the same time, they're blocking our initiatives that they have on their table for 15 years. I mean, the draft project to stop the deployment of weapons in the outer space that we have drafted back in 2008, and we received no reaction. I don't really understand what they are talking about, so we have every reason to believe that the words of today's American authorities about their interest to discuss strategic stability is nothing more than empty words before the presidential election in the United States. They want to show their citizens and everyone else that they are still the ones who rule the world. And where it is beneficial for America to negotiate, they will speak to Russians. And where it's not beneficial to them, they do not want to discuss anything. As they say themselves, it's business as usual. So we'll try to deal as a defeat. But our position is clear. If you want to talk responsibly about the important issues of the stability and security for the entire planet, it must be done in complex, including all those aspects that concern our national interests and have direct impact on the security of our country, on security of Russia. We understand that the West wants to drag us into an arms race, and they want to repeat the trick that they successfully used in the 1980s with the Soviet Union. I would like to remind you, in 1981, 1988, the military expenses of the Soviet Union were 13% of the GDP. So our goal is to develop our military technical complex, to develop our scientific and industrial potential. We need to be rational when we are distributing resources, and we need to build an efficient economy of the armed forces. We would like to make every ruble spent as efficient as possible. We need to develop infrastructure and other facilities, and we need to reach a new level of the technological capacities of the armed forces. I'm speaking about the organization as well, about supplies of the unmanned aerial vehicles to the armed forces, air defense, and electronic warfare complexes and other types of equipment. We need to strengthen our groupings in the West, which is a strategic area for us to neutralize the threats caused by the enlargement of the NATO eastwards when they drag Sweden and Finland into their alliance. The West continues to lie through their teeth without any shame. They say that Russia plans to attack Europe, and we all understand that it makes absolutely no sense. And at the same time, they themselves are choosing targets to deal strikes in our territory. and they are trying to choose the most efficient ways to deal as damage. They are now speaking about sending to Ukraine NATO contingents. But we all remember what happened to those who send their contingents to the territory of our country. But now the consequences for these potential invaders will be much more tragic.
They should understand sooner or later that we also have weapons that can hit targets on their territory. And they're scaring the whole world that this really threatens a conflict using nuclear weapons, and that means destruction of the civilization. Don't they realize that? And these are people who didn't go through ordeals and forgot what war is. We, even today's generation, have come through such ordeals when fighting international terrorism in the Caucasus. And now, during the conflict in Ukraine, the same is happening. They think it's all some cartoons or animated movies. Well, what can we say? Russophobia, just like any other racist ideology or ideology of national supremacy or exclusivity, it blinds. It makes one insane. The actions of the US and their satellites basically dismantled the European security system, spawning risks for everyone. We need to work in the foreseeable future to shape a new circuit of fair security in Eurasia, and we are ready for negotiations with all countries and blocs. And let me emphasize once again, I think it's important today for everyone. Without a sovereign, strong Russia, no firm world order is possible. We aspire to unite the efforts of the world majority in responding to global challenges, including the tumultuous transformation of world economy and world markets, when many previous monopolies are crumbling, as are stereotypes related to them. In 2028, BRICS countries, considering the countries who only recently joined the bloc, will account for 37% of the world's GDP, while the G7's figure will go below 28%. And these figures are very convincing because just a dozen years ago, the situation was quite the opposite. These are the trends, the global trends that there's no getting away from. They are objective. The share of the world GDP in purchasing power parity of the G7 in 1992 was 45.7%. And BRICS, even without its expansion in 92, well, BRICS wasn't there as an organization back then, but BRICS countries were responsible for 16.5%. And now, in 2022, the G7's figure is 30.3%, and BRICS is 31.5%. By 2028, the situation is going to change even more drastically towards BRICS, with 36.6%. And for the G7, the forecast for 2028 is 27.8%. There's no getting away from that. It's objective reality. Whatever may happen, even in Ukraine, this is how things are going to be. Together with our friendly states, we will continue to create an efficient and safe transport corridor infrastructure. We will build a new global financial architecture free of political agendas, especially given the fact that the West has discredited their own currencies and financial systems. We and our partners interact on the principles of equal rights, equality and fairness, including the SCO, BRICS and other unions involving Russia. and these unions are taking in more and more new member states. We see a great future in building a great Eurasian partnership, in blending integration processes within the Eurasian Economic Union, in the One Belt, One Road initiative. The Russia-ASEAN dialogue is growing positively. The Russia-Africa summit became a real breakthrough, with Africa's voice getting louder and louder. And we sincerely support their aspiration for true sovereignty. Russia has long had great relationships with Arabic countries, a great civilization in the Middle East that is developing dynamically. We think it's important to find new points of contacts with our Arabic counterparts. And we're going to do the same on the Latin American track. And asking the government to increase financing for international programs promoting the Russian language and our multinational culture, especially on the territory of the former CIS and in the world in general. By the way, dear colleagues, dear friends, I'm sure many of you have visited the Russia Expo in Moscow to see for yourselves and show your children just how rich and vast our country is. At this exhibition, we started the year of the family. The values of family, mutual support, love and trust go through generations, just like culture, moral values and traditions. And of course, the main goal of a family is, well, the birth of children, procreation, and bringing up children and basically carrying on our multinational ethnicity. We see what is going on in other countries where the moral norms are being deliberately disrupted and whole nations are being pushed towards extinction while we choose life. Russia has been and remains the mainstay of traditional values underpinning the human civilization. Our values are shared by people all over the world, including millions of people in Western countries. Yes, Russia, like many countries, has faced the decline in birth rate. Scientists say that this is due to the global social, economical, technological, cultural and value changes. Young people get their education, build their careers, and they postpone childbirth till later. Obviously, not only the economy and well-being and quality of welfare influence birth rates, but so do the life values embedded in childhood, in family, by education, by culture. It's very important to combine all strata of the state and the support of our religion. The support of family is our fundamental moral choice. A big family with many children should become the norm, the philosophy of a society, and the mainstay of the entire state strategy. I support your ovation here. In the next 6 years, we should achieve sustainable growth and birth rate, and to that end, we're going to make additional steps in regional and economic development, about increasing the living standards in families. We're going to be talking about this in every section of this address. Bear with me, we're just getting started. So everything that has been so far is important, but this is the most important now. Let me start with one of the most acute problems, and that's, to put it mildly, low income that our families with many children have. Over 42 million people were below the poverty line a while ago, and the situation has changed drastically since then. Last year, the number of people below poverty line has decreased to 13.5 million. That's still a lot, but this problem is constantly in the focus of our attention. A number of steps have been taken recently. Since January the 1st, 2023, we introduced a monthly allowance for low-income families from the moment, well, from pregnancy till the child reaches the age of 17, 11 million people enjoyed this allowance last year. Priority is also given to families with many children for social contracts. Now applications for social contracts can be filed through Gosuslugi web portal with a minimum set of paperwork. We are going to work on this. This is going to require some 100 billion rubles of extra financing, but this money is there. It's been allocated. Let me repeat. The problem of poverty is still acute. Right now, it directly affects over 9% of the country's population. And among families with many children, the poverty level is estimated at around 30%. We need to set goals and move consistently towards them to make sure that by 2030, the poverty level in Russia goes below 7%. And among families with many children, we need to halve it by 12% to 12%. And we need to make a special emphasis on decreasing poverty among families with many children. I understand that in general, fighting poverty is no simple task. It needs to be a systemic work. But it's very important that all measures we take in this sphere, all instruments we use, are efficient and give tangible results for families. We need to work constantly on improving the living standards of families with many children, on supporting birth rate. And to that end, we're going to launch a new national project that is titled Family. A number of specific initiatives. Let me dwell on them right now. Russian regions, in addition to federal programs, are going to implement their own measures to support families. And I thank my colleagues for their work. And I suggest helping regions of the Russian Federation where birth rate is below the average in Russia. This is especially important for the northwest of Russia and central Russia. In 39 regions of Russia, total birth rate was below Russian average. Before the end of 2030, we will send to those regions at least 75 billion rubles so that they can boost their family support programs. The money is going to come in the beginning of the next year. Last year, 110 million square meters of housing was built in Russia. That's 1.5 times more than the record high Soviet figure achieved in 1987, when 72.8 million square meters of housing was built. Now it's 110. What's more important, over the last 6 years, millions of Russian families improved their housing conditions. 900,000 of them used family mortgage programs. And we kept improving the accessibility of this program. First, it was available with families with 2 and more children, and then it was... This program acts till July 2024, and I suggest extending it to 2030, retaining its basic parameters. Special attention should be paid to families with children younger than 6 years, with preferred interest rates for them, retained at 6%. Now, when a third child is born in the family, the state pays off part of the mortgage, up to 450,000 rubles. So I suggest extending this norm till 2030. So this year it's going to require almost 50 billion rubles, and then it's going to be more and more. We have the money for that. The general purpose is to make housing more accessible to families and to make sure that the housing in the country is constantly updated and renovated. There are over 2 million families in Russia with 3 and more children. And of course, such families are our pride. And these are real numbers, because in 2018 till 2022, the number of families with many children has grown by 26.8%, a great figure. A decree has been signed that sets a single status for family with many children across the country, and it needs to be further elaborated on the federal and regional level. Families with many children have lots of, well, things to worry about, and parents in such families should have more disposable income. I suggest doubling the tax preference and tax deduction for such families for the second and then third child. What this means, for example, a family with 3 children every month is going to spare 1,300 rubles every month, and the amount of annual income should be increased from 350,000 rubles to 450,000 rubles. And that should be done automatically without having to send an application. And I would like to talk about the maternity capital program. Now, when the first child is born, a family is eligible for a 630,000 ruble payment. The maternity capital is regularly indexed. And this program is going to work till 2026, and I suggest expanding it and extending it till at least 2030. Dear colleagues, I'd like to express my gratitude to charity foundations, social non-profit organizations that help the elderly and sick people, disabled children. They have done very much to put these issues on the state level, and long-term, they have always spoken about long-term care. And I suggest boosting the financing of this system from the state budget. I suggest taking it to a single high standard, ensuring maximum accessibility for those who need this help most. And that's over 500,000 of our citizens. By 2030, we need to make sure that long-term care services are available to 100% of Russian citizens who might need that. Right now, average life expectancy in Russia has exceeded 73 years. We are back to the pre-pandemic level. By 2030, the life expectancy in Russia should be at least 78 years, and then, as we have planned, we need to reach the 80-plus benchmark. Special attention should be paid to rural territories where life expectancy is lower than the average in Russia. To that end, we've established a national project, Active Longevity. It's very important as well to extend the period of active longevity so that people could devote time to their families, to their children, to their grandchildren. We will continue federal projects to fight cardiovascular and oncological diseases, as well as diabetes. And I suggest launching a new comprehensive program to guard maternity, to care for the health of children and adolescents, to make sure that kids are born healthy. Among the priorities of such program will be expanding the network of women's clinic, updating perinatal centers, child's hospitals and polyclinics. Over the next 6 years, the construction and renovation of healthcare facilities is going to receive over 1 trillion rubles extra.
Over the recent years, we have more and more people who are involved in the healthy sporting lifestyle. That's one of the significant achievements of ours. We need to encourage people who take care of their health. And starting the next year, we are going to give tax deductions and benefits to all of those who regularly pass medical examinations and successfully passes the physical condition tests. I guess every one of you remember the joke about quit drinking, start skiing. That's the time has come to make it true. And as for drinking, here we're also making great progress, and this is true. Without any extreme measures, we have significantly decreased the alcohol consumption, first of all, the spirits consumption, and it has a good impact on the people's health. And I suggest use the federal resources to build, especially in smaller towns and in rural areas, additionally no less than 350 sport facilities, universal sporting complexes, and module sport venues where both children and grown-ups and families can exercise, and we are going to earmark some 65 billion rubles from the federal budget for these objectives. The conditions for exercising must be available in public schools and universities and preschool institutions. Many of our kindergartens were open during the Soviet times, and they must be renovated. And we are going to launch a program of the overhaul renovation of the kindergarten facilities starting the next year. People keep speaking about this. As for public schools, some 18,500 public schools require overhaul renovation, and we will help to resolve this issue, and then we will go back to the planned renovations in the schools, and we can say that we are on the right track in this regard. Overall, for the overhaul renovation of the kindergartens and public schools, we are going to earmark more than 400 billion rubles additionally. And also, over the next 6 years, I suggest to open nurse rooms in the schools whenever they need such rooms, such facilities, and there is such need. Because in 2022 and in 2023, out of 39,000 schools, 39,440 schools that we have, only 65% of them have nurse rooms available, medical facilities available. And another thing that our cities are growing, so the social infrastructure has to do more. We have more and more students who go to schools in the second shift, and in some schools there are third shifts even. This is a problem that we also need to resolve in those cities where the schools are overcrowded and where they face this pressing issue. So we will have to use the federal budget, use the federal resources to resolve this issue. We are going to build more schools, no less than 150 new schools and more than 100 new kindergarten facilities. Colleagues, the dreams and exploits of our ancestors, of the older generations, were made possible, and we are proud of their accomplishments. And the future of the country is determined by the aspirations of the younger generations today. Their accomplishments, their values that will be tested by the future is an important guarantee of the sovereignty of the country. This is a continuation of our history, so I suggest to consolidate the positive image of the younger people in our country, and we are going to launch a new national program, the Younger Generation of Russia, the Youth of Russia. This project should be dedicated to the future of our country. That's how younger generations see, that's how teachers see responsibility for the future generations. Thank you very much for your exploits at your workplaces to make young kids feel like they are one the teachers play an important role. I suggest to introduce a special allowance of 5,000 rubles per month for all those teachers who are responsible for education of the children in schools, and additionally for those teachers who work in the vocational schools and in those towns that require special attention, namely such settlements and towns with a population of less than 100,000 people. I'm speaking about all our smaller towns, villages, and so on. Starting from March 1st, 2024, I suggest to double the federal allowance for being the leaders of their classes and for taking care of their students, to make it 10,000 rubles in overall. And here's what I would like to suggest as well. We have set requirements for the salaries of the teachers and other teaching professionals for every individual region of the Russian Federation. These so-called May decrees must be implemented strictly, but at the same time, we must improve the payment system in the region. We need to increase the income of the people who are employed as teachers. The average salaries in various regions vary, and the income of the teaching professionals, even in the neighboring regions, sometimes are very different. And the job of a teacher or a doctor is difficult and responsible no matter where you go. And this huge difference in the salaries from one region to another is unfair, obviously. I understand that it's a old problem. It's a very challenging problem. It requires a lot of funding. And we talked about this with the colleagues from the federal agencies, with the heads of the regions, with the teachers, with the doctors, but it must be resolved. I'm not going to go into detail right now. It is a challenging issue, and both the deputies and the government members, they understand what I'm speaking about, and I would like to instruct the government to come up with the new model for the teaching professionals' salaries by 2025, and in 2026 finalize this project for the entire country. And a separate matter is the additional motivation for younger professionals, so they could see teaching job as something promising for their careers. We are going to earmark more than 9 billion rubles from the federal budget to upgrade the infrastructure of the teaching schools, of the teaching universities. We have always been proud of the innovators, of the unique methods of teaching, and these teachers will have to work on the new promising schools, the school of the high level. We are going to introduce this effort this year already in Ryazan, Pskov, Belgorod, Nizhny Novgorod, and Novgorod regions. Such schools will be introduced in all the federal regions, and we are going to have 12 schools like this before 2030. But we must use rational approach when we are coming up with the disciplines that we teach. And there should be no difference between what we teach children and what we ask them at the exams. Sometimes, unfortunately, we face this, and it forces parents to hire tutors, and not everyone can afford hiring tutors. I would like to work together with the parenting community, with the government, to deal with this issue. And in this regard, I would like to say a couple of words about the unified state exam. There is still a wide discussion and a lot of arguments about this. These mechanisms must be improved. Here is what I suggest at the current stage. I suggest to make yet another step in this direction to allow graduate a second chance, namely to a student. Students themselves will be able to pass a state exam for one of the discipline, and they will have a chance to do so before entering to the universities, so that this new mark could be used when they enter the universities. These may seem trivial things, but they are nevertheless important. Last year, the economy of Russia grew at a rate higher than the average global rate. And we were growing faster not only than the European Union, but all the states of the so-called G7 group. But here is what I would like to emphasize, that the huge role was played by the fundamental reserve that we had accumulated over the decades. Now we have more than 90% potential. The economy is becoming more technological, more complex, and as a result, much more sustainable. Russia today is the largest economy in Europe if we are speaking about the gross domestic product and the purchasing power parity. And it's ranking as number 5 in the world. The rate and the quality of this growth allow us to hope and to claim that in the near future we will be able to make yet another step forward. We will be ranking as one of the top 4 leading countries in the world from the economic point of view. But this development must be converted into the improving of the well-being of our citizens. The share of the salaries in the country's GDP should also be increased. It should grow faster than the inflation, and we are trying to index the minimal wages. Starting from 2020, the minimal wages grew by 1.5 times, from 12 to 19,000 rubles per month. By 2030, the minimal wage should be doubled and be 35,000 rubles, which will have a reflection on the number of allowances of the salaries and in the state companies and other areas of economy. We understand that there are certain risks, certain factors that could hinder the development of our economy: the shortage of qualified personnel, well-trained personnel, and our sovereign advanced technology or lack thereof. So we need to start working now already. That's why I would like to speak about these 2 strategically important topics. I would like to start with personnel. In Russia, we have a lot of younger people. As odd as it may seem, there are some demographical problems with the population growth, but we have a lot of young people. Nevertheless, in 2030, the country will have 8.3 million people in the age group 20 to 24 years old. And in 2035, already 9.7 million people, 2.4 million people more than we do have now. And it is the result of the demographical support measures that we have taken over the previous years. And it is important that these young kids become professionals in their areas, ready to work in the economy of the 21st century. And we have the new national project that is aimed at developing this area as well. A lot is being said, but in practice, we need to strengthen this connection between the schools and the higher education institutions. They must be part of one system, and it is important to have the participation and involvement of the future employers. Now, in all of the schools, we have a system of the profession choice. Starting from the 6th grade, kids can familiarize themselves with various professions. I'm now addressing the heads of enterprises of the medical and scientific centers. Please invite school students for field trips. Let them look around your workshops, like it was suggested during one of my trips. Museums, labs, you should include them in this effort. You should cooperate closely, work together closely to implement the professional vocational school projects, to help with the pharmaceutical development, electronics and other areas. For these areas, before 2028, we need to train some 1 million professionals to work in these areas. And this approach must be used in the entire system of public schools and vocational training, in the schools, in the hospitals, in the service industry, in tourism, and in art industry. And I would like to instruct the government and the regions to implement the program of repairing and equipping the institutions of the vocational education. We should not only renovate the buildings themselves, but gyms and other equipment as well. And we are going to allocate 120 billion rubles from the federal budget to accomplish these goals. Also, we are going to allocate additionally 124 billion rubles. And over the next 6 years, we are going to renovate some 800 buildings of the higher education institutions. Now, speaking about the higher education institution, the goal is that the centers of the science and research were developed across the country, and we are going to build 25 new university buildings before 2030. We have already spoken about that, but I will reiterate that we need to expand this program and to build no less than 40 such student campuses, and we need to allocate some 400 billion rubles for this goal from the federal budget. Of course, these campuses should have all the conditions for the students, postgraduate students, for professors to study, to work, to raise their children. We need to look deep into every possible situation that young parents, young mothers could face. And with this in mind, we must fine-tune the work of the social infrastructure, of the healthcare system, of the urban and rural infrastructure. I would like to instruct the government and the regions to take a good look at this. Last year's address, I have announced about the changes in the higher education system, about the need to use the best Russian practices, the professional foundation for the specialists of the future are laid at the first years of education. I believe we need to increase the salaries of the teachers of such disciplines, such subjects, and I would like to hear from the government about concrete measures, and I believe we need to start test projects in this regard starting from September the 1st. We are going to need additional resources, some 1.5 billion, then 4.5 billion, and these funds have also been calculated. We need to increase the potential and the quality of the entire higher education system. We need to support the universities that want to grow. We have the program Priority 2030 program to work with this. And I suggest to extend this program for 6 more years and to allocate additional 190 billion rubles to fund this program. The projects with the regions and with the economy industries must be a sign of how efficient this program is. And assessing the work of the universities, of higher education institutions, of the vocational schools will be by how successful their students, their graduates in finding jobs in the future. And now I'd like to speak a couple of words about the technological development. The foundation here is the science, of course, the research efforts. When I was meeting with the representatives of the Russian Academy of Sciences that celebrated the 300th anniversary this year, I heard that even in the most difficult periods, Russia has never refrained from funding the fundamental science. We have always thought about the future, and now we must do the same, and that's what we are trying to do.
For example, there's no such spectrum of mega science class scientific venues. as Russia has. It provides unique opportunities for our scientists and scholars and our counterparts and partners from our countries, from other countries. Russia's scientific infrastructure, our powerful competitive advantages, both in fundamental sciences and in developments in pharmaceutics, medicine, healthcare, chemicals, microelectronics, and new materials and space exploration programs. I think we should more than double joint investments by the state and business community in research and development, and to make it to 2% by 2024, which will put us among the leaders in the world. And let me say once again, we need to boost investments in science on the part of private businesses, at least double by 2030. And of course, the most important thing is the efficiency of such investments. We're talking about specific results and specific achievements in each sphere. And we need to use the potential of our research programs in genetics, agriculture, the Russian Scientific Foundation. Considering the actual topics and challenges, we have corrected the program of Russia's scientific program. We're launching new national sovereignty projects. The key areas will be the following. We need to be sovereign. We need to have all the technological keys in such sensitive areas as healthcare, food security. Second, we need to achieve technological sovereignty in spheres that ensure the stability of the entire economy of our country. That means production facilities and machinery, transport, unmanned air and marine systems, data economy, new materials and chemicals. Number 3, we need to create globally competitive products, capitalizing on unique Russian developments, including aerospace, nuclear energy, and new space technology. We need to create legal framework to develop the markets and products of the future. We need to formulate long-term state order for high-tech products so that company have an idea what rules they should work on. We need to establish domestic and international cooperation chains and platforms. We need to establish mass production of our own machines and components. We need to prospect deposits of rare minerals. We're talking about our strategic development for the future. So we need to devote to this all instruments and mechanisms that we have. We need to ensure priority financing and ask the government to take this into account when planning the budget. Technological sovereignty projects must become the locomotive for the development of our economy, helping our entire economy achieve new heights in competitiveness. The share of Russian-made high-technology products and services over the next few years should grow by 1.5 times, and the volume of non-raw material exports should grow by more than 2/3. In 1999, the share of import in Russia was 26% of GDP. Almost 1/3 of it was taken in from abroad. Last year, it was 19% of GDP, or 32 trillion rubles. Until 2030, we need to make sure that the share of import is no more than 17% of GDP. And that means that we ourselves must produce more customer goods, FMCG, machines, transports, vehicles, and so on and so on. But we cannot and we should not do and produce everything. But the government knows what they should work on. Considering the demographic challenges we have faced and the high need, or to put it bluntly, deficit of talent, we need to work on labor productivity. That's one of our key priorities. And that means introducing digital technologies in governance, pursuing energy efficiency, modernization of production facilities, the robotization and automation. By 2030, by the number of Russia should be among the top 25 countries by the number of production manufacturing robots used. And considering what we have today, this is going to be a good result. We will continue creating special competence centers that will promote best practices of lean production across the economy. At least 40% of manufacturing facilities and all social establishments should be encompassed by projects to increase labor productivity. It is huge work, but it's very important. Besides, rearming production should be the goal of advanced engineering schools created on the foundation of the country's leading universities. We had the goal of establishing 50 such schools. 30 of them have been established. 20 of them will start operation this year. I suggest expanding this program to include 50 more schools. And that will mean a total of a network of 100 such schools across the country, training top-notch engineers and specialists. They will train specialists and come up with unique technological solutions in most different areas, be it manufacturing, agriculture, transport, social sphere. And of course, in all these directions, we should use artificial intelligence. We should strive towards that. We should modernize and update the network of libraries in institutions, and they should become real digital centers of knowledge and information. There will be an extra 9 billion rubles allocated towards that. So, dear colleagues, over the last few years, hundreds of new manufacturing facilities, plants and factories have opened in Russia. Well, they have been opening. This is an everyday reality for us. But among them are such industry giants as the Udakan mining factory, the Taishet foundry in Murmansk, the Murmansk large vessel wharf. And over the next 6 years, the level of added value should increase by at least 40% compared to 2022. And this advanced industrial development will mean the creation of hundreds new manufacturing facilities and thousands of new well-paid jobs. We have already formed a so-called manufacturing menu of companies involved in national projects can choose from support measures, special investment contracts, cluster investment programs, and so on. There are lots of instruments that we have come up with and have been using. We are going to develop these as well. In the next 6 years, we will allocate an extra 120 billion rubles for R&D activities, for manufacturing mortgage. And this program will be used to build and renovate over 10 million square meters of manufacturing facilities. Just for comparison here, I'd like to point out, and that's on top of the tempo we have already, of the momentum we have already gained. Every year in Russia, we build over 4 million square meters of production facilities. And that's a great indicator of renovation of our production facilities. And there will be 10 million more extra on top of that. 300 billion rubles will go into the foundation for the development of production. Its capitalization will be more than doubled to support high-tech projects. Another 200 billion rubles will go towards cluster investment platforms to subsidize credits for projects aimed at manufacturing priority products, to incentivize the updates of the manufacturing industry. I suggest increasing the base for calculating wear and tear, and that will be 200% of expenditure on manufacturing and R&D. So if a company buys Russian-made machines for a sum of 10 million rubles, their taxable base will be decreased by 20 million, double that, and that's a serious support. We will continue developing our industrial technoparks with an emphasis on small and medium businesses. It's important here to use the advantages of cluster approach. When companies grow together with their partners and suppliers, and their cooperation gives a multiplying effect for everyone. Before 2030, we need to create at least 100 such venues to create points of growth across the country and to stimulate investments. By 2030, we need to increase the amount of investments in key areas by 70%. And here we have great dynamic. I'd like to say a very good dynamic, but let's keep it at good. The growth rate of investments by accumulated outcome is 8.6% in 2022, while the plan was only 4.5%. In 2022, 15.9%, with a plan of 9.5%. And over the 9 months of the last year, we planned 15.1%, but the growth was actually 26.6%. We need to keep this pace up. Our banking system, our stock markets should ensure the inflow of capital into the economy through systems of project financing and stock financing. Over the next 2 years, we will support industry projects with investments of over 200 million rubles. The point of this mechanism is to make sure that the capital of high-tech companies is supported on the phase of their active growth. I've already instructed to ensure primary IPO of companies who work in high-tech areas. I'm drawing the attention of my colleagues in the Ministry of Finances and the Central Bank. We need to expedite the launch of this mechanism, including subsidizing IPO expenses. We need to get this done at last. And Russia's stock market needs to increase its role as the source of investment. Its capitalization by 2030 should double compared to today's level to 66% of GDP. And people should have an opportunity to make reliable, safe investments in the development of their country. So voluntary savings in non-state pension funds will be insured by the state. Their payback will be guaranteed. Also insured will be long-term individual investment accounts up to 1,400,000 rubles. Long-term financial instruments will enjoy the unified tax deduction, and I consider it necessary to establish a new instrument, savings certificate, where citizens will be able to put long-term deposits in banks for a duration of over 3 years. It's going to be irrevocable, so banks will be able to offer higher interest rates to customers. And of course, these deposits will also be insured by the state up to 2,800,000 rubles. That's double the figure to conventional deposits. Let me emphasize that all state support measures for investments and creating infrastructure for businesses should be tied to increasing salaries and increasing labor conditions and social packages for employees. And of course, the principal requirement is that businesses should work in Russian jurisdiction instead of draining capitals abroad. Where it turned out it's all too easy to lose everything. And now we've been meeting with our business colleagues and figuring how to get money back from there. Well, don't take money there, then you won't have to think how to take it back, how to get it back. We need to invest money in training human talent. The most reliable protection for capitals is our strong sovereign country. The vast majority of entrepreneurs are standing on patriotic positions, and businesses who work here in Russia should have guarantees that their assets and their new investments are well protected. Protection of rights of entrepreneurs, it's closely interconnected, and we need to ensure that it's in the interests of the state, it's in the interests of the entire community, the millions of people working in private businesses, big, small, medium. I've always said, and I'm saying it once again, nobody, law enforcement agency or authorities, nobody is allowed to oppress people or to abuse law. People, including those from the business community, we need to help them. They create jobs. They pay salaries. And this is the goal of the authorities, to help them. Ever bigger contribution to the economy is being made by small businesses. Its share in tourism, in IT, in processing is above 21%. Hundreds of new Russian brands have gone on stage. Last year, 1,200,000 new businesses, small and medium businesses, were registered in Russia last year. This is the highest figure over the last 5 years. People want to start their own businesses. They believe in themselves, they believe in their country, they believe in their success. Over 2023, the number of young entrepreneurs have grown by 20%. There are over 24,000 young entrepreneurs younger than 25 years in Russia. And this trend has to be supported. Over the last 6 years, this figure should grow faster than the GDP. The efficiency of such business should grow, and its quality should grow as well. I've already said there should be no such situations when companies don't want to gain momentum, because tax payments, when switching from simplified tax mode to conventional tax mode, surge abruptly, basically encouraging businesses to fracture and look for ways to optimize the tax burden. I'm asking the government, together with the Duma, to look into parameters of amnesty of smaller companies that had to, use schemes of tax optimization. What's important here? Such companies should give up, of course, artificial fracturing of business and switch to normal, civilized work. And I emphasize, no fines, I repeat, no fines, sanctions, or recalculation of tax is going to be there. That's the very point of the amnesty.
Other than that, I would like to instruct the government starting next year to look into the mechanisms of the gradual increase of the taxation for the companies that are coming over to the simplified tax regime. We have introduced the inspections moratorium, and this measure has proven efficient, and the company that are providing high level of the commodities and of services that are responsible to their customers, we must trust them. So I believe it possible to to leave the temporary moratorium for the inspections and to use the experience that we have accumulated to use this approach as the constant measure, permanent measure. And where there are no risks, we need to bring the number of inspections to the minimum and to delve more into the preventive efforts. And I also would like to give a special right to the SMEs once in 5 years to have loan vacations without worsening their loan history, credit history. We need to establish all the conditions to help the SMEs to develop dynamically and to assure this growth by using every support measure. The taxation for the SMEs must be softened. I would like to instruct the government to come up with concrete suggestions in this respect. We have talked about this a lot, so I'm looking forward to hearing some suggestions for you. It's high time I got it. And companies in the agrarian industry, we are not only supplying the food for the domestic market, but Russia is one of the leaders of food, particularly of wheat. And I would like to thank the workers of agriculture, the farmers, specialists, professionals that are employed in the agricultural industry. I thank them for the impressive results. By 2030, these industries should grow by 1/4 more, and the export should increase by 1.5 times. We will continue to support this industry, and we will continue to invest in the program of upgrading and modernization of the post offices and other facilities of the rural areas. And we are paying special attention to the development of the coastal areas. And we already have these programs, and they must be implemented strictly. And some of you here are aware that the companies are receiving quotas to extract seafood if they are acquiring Russian-produced fishing vessels. And the budget received significant funds, some 200 billion rubles from selling these quotas to extract seafood. And I suggest to use some of these funds to allocate them for the development of the municipalities that are a foundation of our fishing industry. Colleagues, under the modern conditions, increasing the efficiency of all the areas is closely connected to the development of digitalization and the use of artificial intelligence. These solutions allow us to establish digital platforms that allow us to build communication between the citizens, businesses, and the state amongst each other. We need to create a platform where a citizen could maintain their health throughout their lives, use the potential of the entire healthcare system. For example, using the digital profile data, such a citizen will be able to receive a remote diagnosis from a specialist of the medical center. And a family doctor can look at the entire picture of the health condition of a person to prevent any problems with health or any complications of the diseases. To choose the most efficient tactics of treatment. These are not the things of some distant future. We are already introducing these practices in our advanced medical centers, and the goal is to make it accessible and to develop it en masse. And by 2030, we should develop digital platforms in all the key industries of the economy and social sphere. These and other complex issues will be resolved under the new national project that is called the Economy of Data. And we will allocate no less than 700 billion rubles to fund this project. For the state, these technologies, these integral platforms offer new avenues to plan and to develop the economies of the regions and of the industries of the cities, to efficiently manage our programs and national projects. And what is the most important, we can continue to ensure efficient governance for the interests of every individual citizen, every individual family, to give municipal and state services to the businesses in a proactive manner, in a convenient manner, to expedite the result. And Russia is one of the leaders if we are speaking about electronic state services, and many European countries are yet to attain the same level as we already have. And we are not going to remain idle in this respect as well. An important element of digital platforms is artificial intelligence algorithms. And here we must also be self-sufficient and competitive. I have already signed a decree to approve the development of the artificial intelligence development strategy. We are setting out new objectives to ensure the technological sovereignty in such revolutionary areas as the artificial intelligence and language models, because it can become a true breakthrough in the economy and the social sphere, and it must become a breakthrough. And for this, we must increase our resources, and by 2030, the total capacity of the Russian supercomputers must be increased no less than by 10 times. And it is a feasible goal. And we need to develop the entire infrastructure of the data economy. I would like to instruct the government to come up with the concrete, practical measures to support the startup companies that are developing equipment to store and to generate data and working on the software. We need to double the investments into the Russian IT industry. And these systems must be used not only in the large cities, but in smaller towns, in the villages and the rural areas, along the federal highways or local roads. And we need to ensure the access to the high-speed internet across the entire territory of Russia. We are going to resolve this goal, to carry out this goal, by increasing the number of the satellites that we launch into outer space, and we are going to allocate 116 billion rubles to attain this goal. Now I would like to speak about the regional development. Here is what is suggested. First of all, we need to decrease the debt burden for the regions of the Russian Federation. I deem it necessary to remove 2/3 of the debt burden under the budget loans, to write off 2/3 of such loans. It will allow them to preserve some 200 billion rubles annually from 2025 to 2028. I would like to draw your attention to the fact that these saved funds should have a special coloring, so to say, and should be earmarked by the regions to support the investment in infrastructure projects. Dear colleagues, I would like to draw your attention specifically to this fact. Next, in 2021, we launched the infrastructure budget loan program of 500 billion rubles, and then we expanded it, and it has reached 1 trillion rubles. I would like to remind you that such loans are issued to the regions with a 3% interest rate for up to 15 years. It's a great tool for development, and these funds are earmarked for development projects, and the regions can see how efficient this mechanism is. And these loans are not written off, but this year the regions will start to pay off this debt. And the funds that are going to go back to the federal budget, I suggest to use these funds to invest in the development of the regions, to earmark them for the new infrastructure projects. And starting from 2025, We are going to increase the portfolio of the infrastructure loans for the Russian regions no less than 250 billion rubles each year. I also believe that the regions need to be given more ample opportunities to work with the funds to achieve the goals of the national projects. Here is one example. For example, a region is renovating an outpatient clinic. If they still retain some funds from this renovation, they don't have to pay it back to the federal budget. They can allocate it to acquire of equipment for this outpatient clinic and so on and so forth. And of course, we are going to support those regions who have potential for the development, but they need help to tap into this potential to launch the real economy projects, real sector projects. Now 10 regions with the low budget funding are implementing the individual programs of social and economic development. And I would like to instruct the government to extend these programs for 6 more years. And by 2030, all our regions should become more economically viable, more economically self-sufficient. It's a matter of fairness, of just equal conditions for the citizens and to give them an opportunity to achieve high standards of living across the entire territory of our country. Colleagues, we can see that we have ambitious plans, but the expenses are also big. We need to invest largely in the social sphere, in demography, in science, in research efforts, in infrastructure and technology. And I would like to speak about the tax system in this respect. It should provide the resources to achieve the national goals and to implement the regional programs. It should decrease the inequality, reduce the inequality, not only in the society, but in the social and economical development of the regions. It should consider the situation with the individual income and the company's income. We need to speak about the modernization of our tax system to make the tax burden distribution more fair towards those who have higher personal or corporate income. And we need to decrease the tax burden on the families by using those deductions that I have mentioned earlier today. We need to give additional impetus to the businesses that are investing into the development of their projects, and we need to close all the possible leeways used by certain companies to evade the paying of the taxes. And I would like to instruct the State Duma and the government to come up with the practical suggestions in this respect. Considering the changes that have already been introduced, we need to draft the main tax parameters for the period up until 2030 to ensure the stable and predictable conditions for the implementation of any, including the long-term investment projects, because that's what our businesses expect from us. That's what they ask for during the direct contacts. The solutions for the financial support of the regions, for the helping the economy to grow, should also think about the well-being of the people. We have already extended for up until 2030 the special development programs for such regions as North Caucasus and the Kaliningrad region, Donbass and Novorossiya, the Arctic region, and others for 22 far eastern cities and areas. We already have roadmaps for the development, and we are also implementing these measures for the Arctic region. The next step now is to define 200 more smaller settlements and towns, and for each of them we need to develop an individual roadmap and master plan, and this development program should cover more than 2,000 settlements, including smaller villages and towns. And here we must use the solutions that we use to support the regional development, including the infrastructure project. I would like to address to the heads of the regions. These resources must be used to expand the capabilities of the municipalities, among other things. I remember that meeting with the heads of some municipalities. the local authorities have special responsibility because that's where people are going, citizens are going with their day-to-day needs. I would like to thank our mayors, heads of districts, deputies for your work. And separately, I would like to mention the employees at the municipalities who work near the hostilities zone, who are going through the same hardships as their fellow citizens. And the citizens, the individuals, should also be involved in this work. We must use mechanisms where citizens themselves decide what problems should be resolved, what issues should be funded, first of all. And we must fund these projects, these people's public projects from the federal budget, and we are going to extend the Russian competition of the best infrastructure projects in smaller towns and historical settlements. Over 6 years, more than 30,000 of the urban spaces were modernized and upgraded, and I would like to instruct the government to give additional support to those regions that are renovating historical centers of their towns, parks and squares. And we are going to allocate 360 billion rubles to fund the projects in this sphere. Ancient buildings, mansions, churches is the manifestation of our national identity and manifestation of the connection between the generations. I would like to instruct the state council bodies to analyze the legislation framework in the area of preservation of the historic landmarks. We must remove contradictory requirements. Sometimes a landmark is getting destroyed in front of our eyes, but we cannot expedite any measures to save it because it contradicts certain provisions of the law. I suggest to introduce the long-term program of the preservation for the historical landmarks of Russia. I hope that it is going to be adopted for 20 years. We must foresee the support measures for the citizens, from the companies, from the civic organizations that are ready to invest their own funds to help to preserve these historic landmarks. 5 regions are going to be a part of this test project, and by 2030, across the country, we need to work on thousands of the historic landmarks. We need to give them a second life, to serve to the people, to become a true landmark of those settlements. We are going to renovate the infrastructure of museums, libraries, cinema halls, and over the 6 years, we are going to allocate 100 billion rubles more for the educational, historic, enlightenment, and other art projects in various fields. I would like to expand the program. I suggest to expand the program of the so-called Pushkin's card. The school students and younger people can use to attend cinema halls, museums, and so on. And we can use these funds to give an additional impetus to the development of new projects. So I expect to hear about the possible practical steps from the government. And in accordance with the regional doctrine, regional teacher programs, starting from 2025, we are going to launch a program that is going to be called Regional Culture Professional. People keep saying about this, keep asking about this during our meetings. A professional that is going to travel to a rural area or to a small town will receive an allowance of 1 million rubles. And in the Far East, Donbass and Novorossiya, this allowance will be 2 million rubles, this one-time payment allowance.
Moreover, another decision we need to work on and to pass, I'm asking the government to provide for special conditions for mortgages and families in small towns and in regions where new apartment blocks are built in scarce quantities or none at all. And this needs to be done as quickly as possible. We need to finalize the key parameters, the amount of down payment and mortgage interest rates. But please keep in mind, I'm expecting ideas from you. We will continue on special 2% mortgage programs for Far East and the Arctic, Donbas and New Russian region. Credits on privileged conditions will also be available to participants of the special military operation. Special support will go to complex projects of developing territories and housing blocks with infrastructure in regions with insufficient level of social and economic development, where many of our common ideas don't work. Such territories will have an additional 120 billion rubles of financing. And system tasks and federal support, many regions have greatly increased the rates of providing new housing for families. 1,730,000 people gaining new housing. It's very important to maintain this dynamic, and I'm asking the government to come up with a new program of providing housing to people who currently live in decrepit housing. And as for the housing infrastructure and communal infrastructure, till 2030, another 4.5 trillion rubles will go to towards this goal, including private business investments. We will continue to work on our project Clean Water. For many of our towns and village settlements, rural settlements, this is a very pressing problem. First of all, we're talking about providing quality drinking water, gas supply. Gas supply is another topic. We plan to provide natural gas to Yakutia, Buryatia, Murmansk, Jewish Autonomous District, Karelia, and remote regions, and other remote regions. We will use LNG to provide gas to Kamchatka region, of course. This will allow us to expand the social gas supply program. Thanks to this program, gas has already been provided to over 1 million private landlords and preferential categories of citizens, including SMO participants. We subsidize the gas infrastructure inside their landlords. What I'd like to say separately, that within many towns and residential areas, there are garden communities, and people for years, sometimes for generations, have been caring for their landlords, and now they're building houses there that are suitable for round-the-year living, but they cannot connect to gas pipelines because garden communities are not covered by the social gas supply program, and this applies to millions of families. It's in the interests of our citizens to expand the social gas supply program to supply natural gas to garden communities. Support will also be provided to residents of remote residential areas where there will be no network gas in the near future. Now they will get subsidies from the state to buy state-of-the-art gas heating machines and appliances made in Russia, of course. And this support will be provided to families in need. Some 32 billion rubles will be provided for that and earmarked for that. Considering today's environmental standards, we will develop public transport. Till 2030, subjects of the Russian Federation will receive 40,000 more buses, trolley buses, trams, and so on. There will be an additional 150 billion rubles earmarked from the federal budget towards this program of updating public transport. We will also update the fleet of school buses at a rate of at least 3,000 vehicles a year, which is especially important for smaller cities and towns in the regions of the Russian Federation. Indeed, it's a very important program. So, to procure school buses, we will allocate an extra 66 billion rubles. And of course, those will be vehicles manufactured in Russia, completely or with a high degree of localization. Clean air program in 12 industrial centers of Russia, we have already managed to decrease the rate of harmful emissions. Last year, this project now covers 29 more cities. Across the country, the amount of harmful emissions must be halved. And this is a goal that we're going to move towards gradually. There will be a system for monitoring the quality of air. Over the last 5 years, thousands of kilometers of rivers and river banks were cleared. Harmful emissions to the river Volga were halved. And now we're going to halve the amount of emissions to key rivers in Russia. Over the last year, we have liquidated 128 dumps that were poisoning people's lives in 53 regions of Russia. Territories of Krasny Bor, Baikal cellulose factory, and other harmful manufacturing facilities were cleaned. Only the most emergency measures were done there, but we can't leave them the way they are now. We need to complete these projects. We need to create all the necessary infrastructure, and all across Russia we will continue liquidating most dangerous objects that harm the environment. At least 50 of those high environmental risk points should be removed over the next few years. We need to encourage green technologies in businesses and encourage the closed-loop economy. Especially, we have created a very up-to-date industry for handling waste, with 250 factories built to process waste. And by 2030, all solid waste should be sorted and reused. Extra money will be allocated towards that, and together with private businesses, we're going to build 400 objects more. What else I'd like to say? When meeting with people in the Far East, in Siberia, in remote regions, they many times mentioned the topic of retaining our forests and about organizing the industry of forestry and timber. There's a huge public outcry. It's important for almost every person in Russia. And here we unite our efforts, and the situation is changing gradually. A very important benchmark has been achieved. Since 2021, Russia restores more forests than it actually uses. And I would like to thank our volunteers, our school children, students, and all people of Russia who planted trees and took part in environmental initiatives. And I would like to thank the businesses for supporting such initiatives. We will continue restoring forests, parks, and gardens, including those around manufacturing centers. And there's a separate decision to raise the salaries of experts working in forestry and meteorology and in environmental protection. Those who do vital matters of environmental protection. We should say it frankly that the matters that these people deal with are immense, and they're income is very modest. To support civilian initiatives in this sphere, I suggest we should establish a foundation for environmental initiatives. With a total number of grants of 1 billion rubles a year, we'll continue working to preserve the special natural reserves, to protect and restore rare and extinct plants and animal species. And I suggest looking into the idea of creating rehabilitation centers for injured and reclaimed wild animals. By 2030, in every national park of the country, there will be infrastructure for environmental tourism, including eco paths and hiking routes and weekend tours, weekend routes for school children, visit centers, and so on. Up-to-date, safe infrastructure will be built near water objects, including the Lake Baikal, where till 2030 there will be a 24/7 resort facility. And I think it's very important to stick to the zero emission, zero pollution principle. And that means zero waste and zero uncleaned emissions, water emissions. The Baikal resort will be part of the major project, 5Cs project, where facilities will appear on the banks of Baltic, Caspian, Azov, Black and Japan Sea. This will allow to increase the tourist flow by another 10 million people a year. And generally, considering the dynamic development of such tourist destination as Kamchatka, Kuzbas, North Caucasus, Karelia, Russian North, till 2030, the tourist flow should double by that time to 140 million people a year. And the contribution of tourism to Russia's GDP will also double to 5%. There will be more decisions made to that end soon. Development of tourism in regions as a whole is ensured by transport infrastructure. We already opened high-speed highway communication between Moscow and Kazan, and this highway will be extended to Yekaterinburg and then to Tyumen. We're planning a safe highway route all the way to Vladivostok. There will be more than 50 highways going around cities, and the construction of Jubga-Sochi highway on the M4 Don highway that will decrease travel time by 4 times to 1.5 hours. It will allow to develop the Black Sea coast resort areas. So we have an agreement with the government here, and I would like to announce this publicly. This is a very intense project, a very expensive project, consisting entirely of tunnels and bridges. It's very expensive, but still, I'm asking the government to look into schemes of financing it. We have already cleaned up federal highways and over 80% of highways in large agglomerations, and we need to keep this tempo up. In the next few years, special emphasis will be made on developing regional roads. Airfares should become more accessible, and we need to increase air mobility of our people. Intensity of air traffic in Russia should grow by 1.5 times next year. And we plan to expedite regional air commute. Over the next 6 years, the government is facing the task of modernizing the infrastructure in at least 75 airports. Which is over 1/3 of the number of airports that Russia has. At least 250 billion rubles will be earmarked towards this end. That would be direct budget financing. And the aircraft fleet of our airlines will need to be updated with Russian airlines, and they need to be up there with the best in terms of security and reliability. We have been buying too many aircraft abroad. and we haven't been developing our own aircraft production. But still, Russia's advanced development in machine building, digital systems, communications will be in high demand when creating a network of high-speed railroads. And I will say a couple words about this as well. The first route between Moscow and St. Petersburg will go through Tver, and then high-speed railways will go to Kazan, to the Black Sea coast, to Minsk, and towards other popular destinations. Massive modernization of the transport hub will continue. Moscow center diameters will be the foundation for high-speed routes and roads to Yaroslavl, Tver, Kaluga, Vladimir region, and other regions. We will need to modernize the network of internal riverways that will ensure extra economic effect in tourism, in manufacturing, in industry, and other sensitive areas, including the far north. Modern infrastructure works directly to increase the capitalization of all assets our country has. All regions that involve their transit potential and tourist potential. They can use land lots for industry venues. For citizens, it means being able to build houses for big families to live in more comfortable environment. It means new prospects on international markets. A question was raised at one of my meetings with people, and that's cross-border checkpoints, a matter that's especially acute in the Far East. The norm is 19 minutes, while in reality almost every truck driver spends hours at border checkpoints. And our colleagues from the Ministry of Transport have a very specific task in front of them. The time for checking a truck cross-border checkpoints should not exceed 10 minutes. We have technologies that allow that. These requirements are very important for streamlined work of this south-north transport system. Its framework will be not only highways, but also seamless railway communication from the Baltic to the Persian Gulf and the Indian Ocean. We will also continue boosting the throughput of our railways in the southern direction, which will allow us to use the seaport facilities of Azov and Black Sea. The third phase of expanding the eastern network of our railways. We kind of missed the ball there, and we missed a lot of opportunities, but we will make up on that. Its capacity will go from 173 to 210,000 tons a year. And the seaports of Vanino and Sovetskaya Gavan will be modernized. Special attention will be paid to developing the Northern Sea Route. We welcome international logistics companies and states to use the capabilities of this global transport corridor. Last year, 37 million tons of cargo went through it. That's 5 times more than the record high in the Soviet Union times. 5 times.
We are going to ensure the year-long navigation along the Northern Sea route. We are going to work on our Northern Sea ports, including the Murmansk hub, and we are going to enhance our Arctic Sea fleet. Last year, we have introduced the North Pole ice-breaking platform, and we have started the construction of new nuclear-powered icebreaker Leningrad. And next year, we are going to start the construction of the same class that is going to be called Stalingrad. And in the Far East, on the Zvezda shipyard, a Leader icebreaker of the new generation is also under construction. And we are going to use our Russian shipyards to build new commercial fleet vessels, which will allow Russian businesses to ensure more efficient trade flows under the changing times and drastic changes in the global economy. Dear citizens of Russia, friends, I would like to say separately about this. I often meet with the participants of the special military operation, career officers, volunteers, people of civilian occupations who were drafted to go to this war. All of them took weapons in their hands to defend their motherland. I look at these brave people, sometimes very young kids, and with no exaggeration, I can say that my heart is filled with pride for our people and for these guys in particular. They will never retreat. They will never let down. They will never betray. They should be the ones to take leading positions in the education system and in the civic organizations, in state companies, in businesses, in governance, in municipal administrations. They must take lead at the large-scale national projects. These patriots are modest. They are quite reserved. They are not trying to show off their successes. They do not deliver some loud flagrant speeches, but at the turning points of history, these people are coming to the forefront. They are assuming all the responsibility. These people who think about their country, who care about their country, can be entrusted with the future of their country, with the future of Russia. You know that the word elite has already lost its sense. Without any good deeds in the society, they believe to be some kind of privileged people because they stuffed their pockets with money due to the processes that were happening in the 1990s. They are not the elite. The true elite, those who serve Russia, hard workers, soldiers, warriors, time-tested, seasoned people who, in practice, proved their loyalty to Russia. These are decent people. These are worthy people. And in this regard, I believe it is an important decision already starting from tomorrow, from March the 1st of 2024, veterans of the special military operation, soldiers and officers who are now fighting in the active units can apply for the participation to become a student of the special personnel program, let's call it Time of the Heroes. I got this idea when I met the students who participated in the special military operation from St. Petersburg. This program will be built in accordance with the same requirements and standards as our best projects, the program that is called Governors' Schools and the Leaders of Russia project. Its graduates are taking high ranks in many areas. They also become the heads of the regions or the ministers. Veterans with a higher education can join this program, those who have managerial experience, no matter what their rank and position is. But mainly, these should be the people who showed their best quality, who showed that they can lead their comrade in arms behind themselves. And the education effort will start in the next few months. Among teachers will be the people from the government, from the president's administration, heads of the regions, and our largest companies. And in the future, we are going to expand such personal training programs. We are going to launch such courses in the National Economy Academy and other institutions. Also, veterans of the special military operations will have a priority chance to receive a higher education and a civilian profession in our leading universities. I would like to instruct the Defense Ministry commanders of the combat units to support the aspirations of their soldiers to try themselves in this new personal training program, to allow them to apply to participate in this program, to travel for the classes. Both privates and sergeants and the officers are becoming a backbone, a pillar of our armed forces. And those of them who will choose to continue with their military career will be given a preference when applying to the officer schools and military higher education institutions. Dear friends, self-sufficient, sovereign. Self-sufficiency, sovereignty is something that has to be proven every day. We are not speaking about only our responsibility for the present and for the future of Russia. This is our motherland, the motherland of our ancestors. And we are the only ones who cherish it. And we must pass it on to our descendants, a strong, wealth country. We have managed to introduce a lot of national projects based on new principles, based on huge arrays of data, modern digital technologies that allow us to make the work more efficient, to control the risks, to expand, to take into consideration the volume of the data, and we are receiving more and more feedback from the population. And I would like to thank my colleagues from the government, from the governmental agencies, from the regions, who have kept working during the pandemic, during the sanctions campaign against Russia. They continued to work hard to build this system. I know that it was a hard work, difficult work, but it is already yielding results. We can see that already now from the results. We will continue to work in this logic. All the national projects I have mentioned today must be approved, must be coordinated among themselves. And once again, I would like to underline, these are not individual agencies' projects. They must become a part of one joint system to pursue our development goals. So I would like to instruct the People's Front to keep under control the implementation of all the decisions made by the government. And the main outcome of the programs that we have is not measured in tons or kilometers or the funds that we have earmarked. The main thing for us is the appraisal of people, of how their lives are changing for the better. The scale of challenges that Russia is facing requires fine-tuned joint effort from the state, from the civil society, from the businesses. It is not enough to drop the budget for the next 3 years, but we need to consider all expenses for the period of up until 2030. So basically now we need to come up with the 6 years financial plan of developing of our country, and we are going to introduce new initiatives because the life will make us to introduce these changes. Despite all the difficulties coming from outside, we are working on the long-term plan. Of the program that I have outlined is a fundamental program. It is a program of a strong, sovereign country that looks into the future with confidence. To accomplish the goals that we have set out, we have enough resources, we have colossal opportunities and potential. But I would like to emphasize the main thing that we have in our possession. to attain all the goals that we have set for ourselves depends on our soldiers, officers, volunteers, all the servicemen that are now fighting at the front lines. It depends on their courage. It depends on the courage and determination of our comrades that are making progress, going on the offensive, sacrificing their lives for us, for the fatherland. It is them, our soldiers, who are establishing the necessary conditions for the future growth and development of the country. I would like to bow down to you, lads. I thank all of you, colleagues, all the citizens of Russia for solidarity, for being reliable. We are one big family. We stand together. That's why we will do everything the way we planned, the way we have dreamt of. I believe we will be victorious. We will be successful. I believe in the future of Russia. Thank you.